This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Injuries were the key talking point across week 2 so far in the NFL, with several key fun players going down. And unfortunately, they are a key for Monday Night Football as well, as we close out the week with the Falcons taking on the Eagles. No A.J. Brown in this game, and a lot of ripple effects of that injury. We've seen the spread tighten, the total has come down, and I think there may still be value in one of those numbers. We're going to break down where I'm seeing value in my model for tonight's game, break down some player props I like as well, and SGP to get you ready for the Falcons at the Eagles on Monday Night Football. This is Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is Jim Saunas. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to preview Monday Night Football between the Falcons and the Eagles, laying out my top bets at FanDuel Sportsbook for tonight. We'll dive into all that here in just 1 second, but first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts Monday through Friday, talking football here on the feed. College football on Wednesdays, player props Fridays, NFL best bets, talking first look on Tuesday, best bets on Thursday. So a full slate of shows Monday through Friday, both on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and over on the FanDuel YouTube page. For those of you watching the FanDuel YouTube page, A, thank you as always. B, leave us a thumbs up there. Make sure you are subscribed to that channel to get these shows as they go live each and every weekday. Football is back, and there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now all customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Plus, with FanDuel, you don't even have to leave the app to access real-time stats and data to help you make even more winning bets. Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in D.C. Offer ends 9/22/24. After a 3-week free trial, the full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally. Cancel anytime, no refunds. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat-Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look here at the markets for the Falcons at the Eagles at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, the Eagles favored by 5.5. Total is 46.5. Now, both those numbers have shifted since the A.J. Brown injury news. Brown, of course, not going to play in this game as a result of an injury he suffered in practice this week. The Eagles were favored by 6.5. The total was 47.5. Now, and I wrote up my best bets for this week over at FanDuel Research. I had the under at 47.5 included in those recommendations. I do still show value with it at 46.5, even at -120, enough so where I would still take the under for the Falcons and Eagles. If you're looking for a bet for Monday Night Football, my favorite one right now is actually that under 46.5 at -120, and it's for a couple of reasons. The first one is A.J. Brown. Obviously, that does not help things, but again, I was on the under here even before that. And part of that is because the Falcons actually do have a very good rush defense. They were pretty solid against the Steelers last week, but looking back to last year, they were rock solid there. It was the secondary that truly let them down. So let's say you're Philadelphia, you're Kellen Moore, and you've got no A.J. Brown. You may want to run the ball a bit more in order to account for the fact that's probably the best part of your offense right now. But you're not going to face the same sieve you faced last week with the Packers rush defense this week against the Falcons. So the rushing that the Eagles do may be less efficient as a result of the defense they are facing. And I think they will still try to do that because it is probably still their best plan. But when they do so, it'll burn clock, which is good for an under. As for the Falcons side of things, also plenty of question marks there. Kirk Cousins, they say he's healthy, and he's had a lot of time to recover from an Achilles, but does not seem like the mobility is there. They didn't put him under center a whole lot in week 1. That's a pretty big concern if you're trying to generate a super efficient passing offense without a superhero quarterback in Kirk Cousins. The offensive line did struggle last week without the play action and stuff like that. And maybe that was because they were facing TJ Watt. But the Eagles also have some guys up front too who looked pretty good in week 1. And I'm not really sure what Kirk's mobility will look like should he be put under pressure. We also saw the Falcons go decently run heavy last week. Again, could have been because TJ Watt was destroying things on the opposing side. But the Eagles got kind of torn up on the ground eventually last week. Now, I know Josh Jacobs was not good early on in that game, but the overall full game numbers for the Packers on early downs were very good on the ground. So I think what we could see here is both teams being pretty run heavy, and we may not have the best efficiency from the ground game on the Eagles side as a result of how good this Falcons rush defense is. So I think that we're going to see the clock run pretty consistently during this game. So I'm still okay with the under here, despite the fact that it is down a point from where it was earlier on this week. Do still show value. So my favorite bet across all of Monday Night Football is the under 46.5 at -120. My model does show value on the Falcons plus 5.5, but I have no interest in taking that. I thought at 6.5 it was fine. 5.5, that's a bit tougher to get to. Not a big move there, but the 6 actually is a decently key number. So losing the 6 did hurt my enthusiasm here. And also, I just don't really want to buy into this Falcons team right now, given what we saw from how limited their play calling was with Kirk Cousins last week. I could see the issues that showed up there against a very good Steelers defense popping up again here, even though the Eagles defense is not quite on the same level. So I have value on the Falcons plus 5.5, but it's not enough where I actually want to pull the trigger. So from a traditional market perspective, I want to stand with just the under as the lone bet I like in this game. So Falcons, Eagles under 46.5 for me. From a player prop perspective, I want to buy in to Bijan Robinson because his role in the opener was really, really good. 90% snap rate for Bijan in that game, first game with this new coaching staff. So I want to buy into that role in this game. The problem is expectations for him are pretty high already. His rushing yardage prop, 64.5. I don't mind that, but it is not a low number that given that Bijan Robinson does get a lot of work in the passing game, his rushing plus receiving yardage mark, 101.5 of the over at -114. So not the best numbers, but 18 carries last week for Robinson, and he has a better matchup than Saquon Barkley in this game. And I actually can exploit that. If you go to FanDuel Sportsbook, you can see that there is a market at FanDuel of who will have the most rushing yards during this game. Right now, Saquon Barkley leads away at -115, Bijan Robinson plus 160. I think that Robinson's a value there. And it makes sense why he'd be an underdog here because the Falcons are underdogs and you see more rush attempts out of teams that are favored, teams that win games. Falcons not expected to do so here. But maybe they can keep things close for all 4 quarters. And if they do, Robinson, A, will probably be part of the reason why they do so. And B, he's probably going to get a lot of volume. It's in the Falcons' interest to keep the ball on the ground. It keeps Kirk Cousins from having to move a whole lot, keeps the ball out of the Eagles' offense's hands. And giving the ball to Robinson on the ground accomplishes both of those things. Plus 160 is not an insane number because Jalen Hurts is a factor here as well. They haven't been super efficient running the ball with the quarterback, but I think that if we're trying to buy into Robinson, this is my preferred route for doing so, given how high the markets are on him. It also allows us to fade Saquon Barkley, given that tough matchup. So I like Bijan Robinson plus 160 to lead this game in rushing yards for tonight. That is my favorite way to buy into Robinson in his specific role. The other guy I think is worth targeting for tonight is Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert, obviously going to benefit from the fact that there is no A.J. Brown in this game. You would want to go towards Devontae Smith, but the market already says you missed the boat there probably. 75.5 is the receiving yardage number for Devontae Smith. That's a pretty high number. So not super intrigued by going there. Goddard, though, is at 43.5 receiving yards. Over is -113. And that's going to open up some targets in this offense. Now, Jalen Hurts doesn't target running backs very much. No A.J. Brown here. Goddard last week, 5 targets for 31 yards. He did lose some snaps to Grant Calcaterra, who has looked good at times. But if you look back to last year, Goddard had a 19% target share in the games that he played, and A.J. Brown is at 30% in those games. Some of those targets for Goddard were deep, so he could gain a chunk gain or two. But I think that's pretty encouraging here. Now, the Falcons do have Jesse Bates, and we saw last week, if you saw the Justin Fields passing map, it was all stuff outside the numbers. Did not throw in the middle of the field, and Arthur Smith said that was intentional. Kellen Moore's probably going to do the exact same thing here. But Jalen Hurts doesn't throw over the middle to begin with anyway, so it's not a big alteration for him to not throw over the middle, and he does still throw the ball to Goddard. So 43.5 is not a bad number. I'm pretty willing to go there. And I would also consider some alt receiving markets if they eventually do up. They're not currently posted at FanDuel Sportsbook. But I think that Goddard over 43.5 a good way to go here. I gave some thoughts to Jahan Dotson under 27.5 receiving yards at minus 113. He's not a guy who's gotten a lot of yardage in the past, but he did run a lot of routes last week. 21 routes run for Jahan Dotson. That'll probably go up this week as well. Gets further integrated with his offense. So couldn't quite see the value there with Jahan Dotson to go under 27.5. But did give at least some consideration. So check back on Goddard, the alt receiving market, see if that is up later on, because I do think we could potentially have some intrigue there. So the two individual player props I like are Bijan Robinson to lead the night in rushing at plus 160 and Dallas Goedert over 43.5 receiving yards at minus 113. All right, as we did last week, do you want to go through a same game parlay for this game? And it will begin with the under at 46.5 because that is my favorite bet of the game. We have to think about bets that correlate well with that under. The Robinson one doesn't really do a whole lot as far as correlating with the under. The Goddard receiving yardage over also doesn't do a ton for us there because it implies the Eagles moving the ball, and that's not great for an under. So instead, I want to go towards the passing yards number for Jalen Hurts. Now, this doesn't mesh well with our Goddard bet because we're taking the under on Jalen Hurts 230.5. But I think he can still go under that number, despite the fact that we're taking the Goddard over because there's just not a lot of guys in this offense who are in targets right now. And I do think we'll see a rush-heavy attack for the Eagles, despite the fact it is a tough matchup here with the Falcons. So we'll pair the Jalen Hurts under 230.5 passing yards with the game under of 46.5. And finally, I do want to take advantage of the fact that Bijan Robinson probably going to get a lot of volume in this game. And that's part of the reason why I like the under, is seeing a lot of rushing attempts and seeing that clock drain. Unfortunately, you cannot pair a running back rushing attempt over with a quarterback passing yardage under because those two bets are way too correlated, and FanDuel knows that. So instead, we'll take Bijan Robinson over 64.5 rushing yards. Now, that does mean we are buying into an over offensive prop while betting the under for the game. Not the best process there, but I do think that it does mesh well with our overall thought process of the Falcons able to run the ball effectively with Robinson, keep the clock churning, and keep the Eagles offense off the field. So if you pair the under 46.5 with the Jalen Hurts under 230.5 passing yards and Bijan Robinson over 64.5 rushing yards, that grades out to plus 384 for tonight, a 3-leg same game parlay in this game. All the bets do play pretty well together. They're all bets I like individually by themselves. And again, it does factor in my favorite bet of the night with the under for the game, and some bets that are more likely to cash if some of our assumptions around that under do wind up playing out. So take that at plus 384, under 46.5 points, Jalen Hurts under 230.5 passing yards, and Bijan Robinson over 64.5 rushing yards for tonight. That's all that we have here for today, breaking down Monday Night Football. But we'll be back with you once again tomorrow. We're going to go through some surprises for the first 2 weeks, talk about some power rankings for me, and then take a first look at the week 3 betting lines at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. To get that show and all of our shows as they are posted, search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe if you like what you hear. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. And of course, if you're watching YouTube, leave us a thumbs up there and subscribe. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. If you got any questions for me, I am on X at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets for Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. Take a look ahead to week number 3. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.